Imagine having so much money that you cannot spend it. You cannot deposit it. You cannot even count it. Imagine a business where your biggest expense isn't production, or marketing, or even bribes. It is rubber bands. $2,500 a month, just to hold the bricks of cash together. Imagine losing $2 billion every year, not to theft, not to bad investments, but to rats. Rats that crawl into your warehouses and eat your fortune. Mold that rots your bills in damp basements. And you don't even care, because you make that money back in a single week. This is not a story about drugs. This is a story about the nightmare of logistics. It is the story of a man who built an empire of paper and then drowned in it. Welcome to the graphic ledger. Late 1970s. Colombia. A small-time smuggler named Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria is looking for a new product. He has been moving cigarettes and stereo equipment. The margins are thin. The risk is high. But then, he sees the future. A white powder derived from the coca leaf. At the time, it was a niche drug for the rich. Pablo saw it as a commodity. Like coffee. Like oil. He realized that the real money wasn't in selling grams on the street corner. It was in the supply chain. He wasn't just a criminal. He was a CEO. He consolidated the labs. He standardized the routes. He bought the planes. He created the Medellin Cartel. And suddenly, the money started to flow. But it didn't just flow. It crashed down like a tsunami. By the mid-1980s, Escobar's organization was bringing in $60 million every single day. $420 million a week. $22 billion a year. Let's put that into perspective. At his peak, Pablo Escobar was making more money than General Motors. He was listed by Forbes magazine as the 7th richest man in the world. But General Motors can put their money in the bank. Pablo could not. This created a problem that no business school teaches. The problem of physical cash. Cash is heavy. Cash takes up space. $1 million in $100 bills weighs about 10 kilograms. Pablo was receiving tons of cash. Literally. Plane loads of money were flying back from Miami. His accountants stopped counting the money. It took too long. Instead, they started weighing it on scales. If the scale said 50 kilos, they knew roughly how many millions were there. But where do you put it? You can't walk into a bank in Medellin with a truckload of US dollars. So, you hide it. Everywhere. They stuffed cash inside the walls of houses. They buried it in farming fields in plastic drums. They hid it in sofas, under floorboards, in caves. Pablo Escobar turned the landscape of Colombia into a giant piggy bank. But nature fights back. In the damp tropical climate, paper money degrades. Billions of dollars simply rotted away underground. Rats, seeking warmth and nesting material, chewed through entire fortunes. Escobar wrote off 10% of his annual earnings as spoilage. Think about that. He was okay with losing $2 billion a year to rodents. That is more than the GDP of some small countries. But while the money was rotting in the ground, the violence was growing on the streets. Escobar had a simple management philosophy. Plata o Plomo. Silver or lead. Take the bribe, or take the bullet. He didn't just bribe police officers. He bought the entire system. He built neighborhoods for the poor. He built soccer fields. He handed out cash like candy. To the people of Medellin, he was Robin Hood. To the government, and to the United States, he was a monster. But a monster with endless resources is hard to kill. When the law got too close, he didn't run. He declared war. He put a price on the head of every police officer. He blew up an Avianca commercial airliner, killing 107 people, just to try and kill one presidential candidate. He missed the candidate. The silver was gone. Now, there was only lead. The Colombian government was on its knees. They were so afraid of his power and his money that they agreed to a ridiculous deal. Pablo would go to prison, but he would build the prison himself. And he would choose his own guards. They called it La Catedral, the cathedral. It wasn't a prison. It was a 5-star resort built into the side of a mountain. It had a soccer field, a disco, a bar, a jacuzzi, and a waterfall. Pablo invited professional soccer players to play matches with him. He threw parties. He continued to run his empire from his private office, surrounded by fax machines and phones. It was the ultimate display of power. He was locked up, but he was still the king. But even kings make mistakes. Paranoia set in. Inside his luxury prison, Pablo suspected some of his lieutenants were stealing from him. He had them brought to La Catedral. And there, inside the walls of his sanctuary, they were tortured and killed. This was too much. Even for the Colombian government. They decided to move him to a real prison. But Pablo had built the place. He knew the exits. Before the army could seize him, he walked out the back door into the fog. Now, the final act begins. The hunt. Escobar was on the run. But this time, he was alone. The Americans sent Delta Force. The Colombian police formed a special search block. Rival cartels formed a death squad called Los Peeps. Everyone wanted him dead. This is where the tragedy of the cash becomes clear. Pablo was hiding in a safe house in the mountains with his family. His daughter was cold. She was freezing. They had no firewood. So, Pablo opened a duffel bag. He took out $2 million in crisp US banknotes. And he lit a match. He burned $2 million just to cook a meal and keep his daughter warm for one night. The money was useless. It couldn't buy safety. It couldn't buy time. It could only burn. On December 2nd, 1993, the end came. Not in a palace. Not in a fortress. But in a middle-class neighborhood in Medellin. Using radio triangulation technology, they found him. The king of cocaine, the man who had more money than he could count, was barefoot. He tried to run across the rooftops. Gunfire erupted. And then, silence. Pablo Escobar lay dead on a clay roof tile, wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt. The police officers smiled and posed for photos with his body like a hunting trophy. The empire of paper collapsed instantly. The hidden millions are still out there. To this day, farmers in Colombia find plastic drums filled with rotting dollars while plowing their fields. A cursed treasure that brings nothing but bad luck. And what is left of his legacy? Violence, addiction, and hippos. Yes, hippos. Pablo imported exotic animals for his private zoo. After his death, the hippos escaped. Today, they roam the Magdalena River, an invasive species with no natural predators, destroying the ecosystem, just like the money did. So, what is the lesson written in the graphic ledger today? Money is a tool. But when you accumulate too much of it, outside of the law, it stops being an asset. It becomes a burden. It becomes a physical weight that drags you down. Pablo Escobar thought he owned the money. But in the end, the money owned him. He died with billions in the ground, but he couldn't buy another second of life. This is the graphic ledger. See you in the next entry.